The late afternoon sun blazed down on the quiet cul-de-sac of Willow Creek, the kind of neighborhood where every lawn was clipped to regulation height and every driveway sparkled under the weight of Hoa pride. Tom Carter parked his old, dust-covered Ford pickup in front of the modest, single-story house that had been in his family for 70 years. He let the engine sputter off, resting his hands on the steering wheel for a moment as if to gather himself. After 4 tours overseas and a medical discharge that left his right knee aching with every change in the weather, Tom had envisioned a peaceful life, mornings fishing at the lake, afternoons fixing up his grandfather's house, and evenings spent watching the sunset from the old rocking chair on the porch. The house wasn't much compared to the sprawling, modern builds around him, but to Tom, it was home. As he stepped out of the truck, duffel bag slung over his shoulder, he inhaled deeply, the scent of pine and summer grass filling his lungs. For the first time in months, he felt grounded. But that peace lasted exactly 7 minutes. "Excuse me," a sharp voice pierced the quiet like nails on glass. Tom turned to see a woman striding down the sidewalk toward him. She was in her mid-50s, wearing a floral blouse tucked neatly into cream slacks, oversized sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. A clipboard was clutched in her hands, the universal symbol of authority in places like Willow Creek. "Yes?" Tom asked evenly, shifting the weight of his duffel bag. The woman stopped at the edge of his driveway, planting one manicured hand on her hip. "I'm Karen Green, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association," she announced, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "And you must be Thomas Carter." "Tom," he corrected politely. Karen's painted smile didn't waver. "Well, Tom, welcome back. I assume you're aware of the outstanding balance on this property. $10,000 in unpaid HOA dues and fines. I'm here to let you know that payment is due immediately." Tom blinked, the sun reflecting off the lenses of her sunglasses like 2 cold mirrors. "I'm sorry, did you say $10,000? Karen tapped her clipboard, lips curling upward. "Yes, this property has been in violation for years, chipped paint, broken fence, weeds. Quite frankly, it's been a blight on the neighborhood. The HOA voted unanimously to place your house under lien until payment is made." For a moment, Tom said nothing. He just looked at her, his jaw tightening ever so slightly. In Afghanistan, silence like his usually came right before a storm. "I've been overseas serving this country," he said finally, his deep voice calm but edged with steel. "This house was my grandfather's, and it's been in my family since the 50s. I don't owe you, or your HOA, a dime." Karen let out a sharp laugh, the kind people use when they think they've already won. "Oh, rules are rules, dear. And we follow them strictly here. Either you pay up or vacate the premises. We already have buyers interested, people who can keep up with our standards." Tom's gaze didn't falter. He adjusted the strap of his duffel bag and, without another word, turned and walked into the house, the door clicking softly shut behind him. Karen smirked in victory, tapping her pen against her clipboard as she muttered under her breath, "Another freeloader thinking he can coast." What Karen didn't know, what none of the HOA board members knew, was that Tom had something they didn't: leverage. The house smelled of pine and old books, the way it always had. Tom set his duffel bag down in the entryway and walked into his grandfather's old study. Everything was as it had been the day the old man passed, the oak desk neatly organized, the leather chair tucked in, and the shelves lined with binders of yellowing documents. Tom sat down and began sifting through the paperwork. His grandfather had been meticulous with records, and sure enough, after a few minutes of searching, Tom found the file he was looking for. A large, weathered envelope labeled Property Deeds and Rights. He pulled out the stack of papers, scanning the bold, stamped legal language until his eyes landed on a clause highlighted in fading ink. Greater than parcel owner, Thomas Carter Sr. Ownership of all land designated in Survey Map 1973B, including but not limited to lots subdivided under Willow Creek Development, expires only by transfer, sale, or written forfeiture. Tom's brow arched slightly as realization hit him. This wasn't just a deed to his house, it was a deed to everything. When his grandfather first purchased the land decades ago, the area had been nothing but dense woodland and a small lake. Developers had leased large sections of the property under a long-term agreement to build the Willow Creek subdivision. Roads, sidewalks, the clubhouse, even the dock by the lake, they had all been constructed under that lease. And according to the paperwork, that lease had expired 5 months ago. Legally, Tom still owned nearly 60% of the entire neighborhood. By the next morning, Tom was at the county registrar's office. The place was quiet, the low hum of fluorescent lights filling the room as he slid the documents across the counter to the clerk, a man in his 60s who had known Tom since he was a teenager. "Morning, Tom," the clerk greeted with a smile. "What brings you in?" "Need to check on some property records," Tom said, handing over the deeds. The clerk adjusted his glasses, flipping through the papers. His eyebrows shot up almost immediately. "Son, do you know what you've got here?" Tom crossed his arms over his chest. "I think so, but I'd like you to confirm." The clerk let out a low whistle. "This isn't just your grandfather's house. According to these records, and they're airtight, you own more than half the land under Willow Creek. Roads, communal areas, even the lake. And from what I see here, their lease agreement expired back in February." Tom allowed himself a small smile. "So, legally, they've been using my land rent-free. That's about the size of it," the clerk said, shaking his head in disbelief. "You could take this to court and win without breaking a sweat." "Not planning on it," Tom replied, folding the papers neatly and slipping them back into the envelope. But it's time the Hoa understood exactly who they're dealing with. As he walked out of the registrar's office and into the bright morning sun, Tom felt the shift in the air. Yesterday, Karen and her clipboard had seen him as just another poor veteran they could bully into submission. By tonight, the entire neighborhood would know the truth. By the time Tom pulled his truck into the driveway later that afternoon, word had already started to spread like wildfire through Willow Creek. A few neighbors were out tending to their gardens, watering flower beds or trimming hedges, but their eyes followed Tom as he stepped out of his truck with a calm, steady demeanor. Whispers fluttered through the cul-de-sac like the rustling of dry leaves. "He's the one they're saying owns the land." "No way," Karen said. "Is just some broke vet." "That's what she said, but my cousin works at the county office. It's true. He owns more than half the neighborhood." Tom ignored the murmurs, carrying a folder under his arm as he walked toward the house. He wasn't interested in gossip. He had facts, and those facts were about to change everything. At precisely 6 p.m., the Hoa meeting began at the Willow Creek Clubhouse. The spacious, glass-walled room was filled with meticulously arranged chairs and a long oak table where the board members sat like royalty awaiting their subjects. Karen Green was already there, flanked by 2 board members, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her signature clipboard propped up in front of her like a judge's gavel. She didn't even glance up as Tom walked in. "Well," she said, her voice sharp, "look who decided to join us. Mr. Carter, I assume you've brought the $10,000 you owe us." Tom didn't answer immediately. He crossed the room, the steady thump of his boots against the polished tile floor echoing in the sudden hush. Without a word, he laid the thick envelope on the table and slid it across toward Karen. She smirked as she reached for it. "Smart man." Her voice died mid-sentence as she opened the envelope, her perfectly manicured fingers flipping through legal documents, stamped and notarized. "These," Tom said evenly, "are the original property deeds, signed by my grandfather and recorded with the county registrar. Every parcel, every road, every communal area in this subdivision was built on my family's land. The developers had a 30-year lease, which expired in February." Karen's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" One of the board members sputtered. "This can't be right." "It's very right," Tom interrupted, his voice calm but firm. "I confirmed it this morning with the county registrar. And unless you can produce documentation that overrides these deeds, you've been trespassing on my property for the last 5 months." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Neighbors leaned forward in their chairs, phones discreetly recording as the scene unfolded. Karen slammed the folder shut, her cheeks flushed a furious red. You can't just come in here and make claims like this. We have rules, Mr. Carter. Regulations. You're still part of this community, and you still owe. Tom cut her off with a quiet but unmistakable authority. "No, what you don't seem to understand, Karen, is that you're on my land. Your rules, they don't apply here anymore. Not unless I say they do." For a long moment, the room was silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Then, slowly, a murmur began to ripple through the crowd. "You mean, he owns the roads too?" Someone whispered. "Yes," another voice chimed in, louder now. "I just checked online. His family still holds the master deed. It's all public record." Karen tried to regain control, her voice rising. "Everyone, calm down. This doesn't change anything. The Hoa is still in charge." "No," Tom said, stepping closer to the table, his broad shoulders casting a long shadow. "What it means is that as of today, the Hoa no longer has authority over any of my property. That includes the clubhouse, the roads, the lake, and every inch of land your bylaws claim jurisdiction over. From now on, if you want to use my land, you'll need my permission. And my terms." The board members exchanged panicked glances. Karen's composure cracked. You can't do this. I'll call the county. Tom leaned down, his voice dropping low but carrying to every corner of the room. "Call whoever you want. The county already knows. I'm not here to play games, Karen. I've spent years fighting for people's freedom overseas. I won't let a petty Hoa bully me, or anyone else in this neighborhood, on my own land." The next morning, bright orange cones blocked the entrances to the cul-de-sac. Tom stood near his truck with a few contractors, pointing out areas along the road while they marked the pavement with spray paint. Curious neighbors gathered at the ends of their driveways, whispering amongst themselves. By noon, a large sign stood proudly at the entrance. Greater than private property, trespassers will be prosecuted. Contact the property owner for access rights. Karen stormed down the street, her phone clutched in her hand. This is harassment, she screeched. You can't just block access to the community. Tom didn't even look up as he signed a form from one of the contractors. Actually, I can. This road is on my deed. And until the HOA pays fair market rent for the land it's built on, access is restricted. You'll regret this, Carter, she spat, her voice trembling with fury. Tom finally turned to face her, his expression unreadable but his voice calm as ever. No, Karen, what you're going to regret is underestimating me. Within a week, everything changed in Willow Creek. The HOA's stranglehold over the neighborhood dissolved almost overnight. Residents who had been fined for trivial things, a slightly faded mailbox, grass an inch too tall, a trash bin left out for an extra hour, now found their fees cancelled. Tom set up a fair, voluntary maintenance program instead, charging minimal fees to cover basic services but allowing everyone the freedom to manage their own homes without fear of punishment. Neighbors who had avoided Tom out of fear of Karen's gossip now stopped by to thank him. One older man, a retired Marine named Bill, shook Tom's hand firmly and said, "It's about time someone stood up to them." Children played freely in the cul-de-sac, laughter ringing through the air where tension had once hung thick. And Karen, she retreated into her perfectly trimmed house, her empire of clipboards and fines reduced to nothing but a bitter memory. She tried to rally support, of course, late-night emails, angry posts on the community board, but no one listened anymore. One evening, Tom sat on the porch with a glass of sweet tea, the sun dipping low over the horizon. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. His phone buzzed with a message from the county registrar. Greater than Mr. Carter, all documentation has been updated. Your ownership of the designated parcels is now fully recorded and protected under county law. Congratulations. Tom smiled faintly, setting the phone down beside him. He had come home hoping for peace, and now, finally, he had it. And as he rocked slowly in the old chair his grandfather had built decades ago, the thought crossed his mind that maybe, just maybe, Willow Creek could finally become the kind of neighborhood his grandfather had always dreamed it would be.